welcome to the 4D21 LTS release webinar, and we are really glad to have you here with us. If you joined us today, it probably means you are thinking about your next move with 4D, whether it is AI, web, performance, compliance, or simply staying competitive. So instead of walking through a long list of changes, we asked each product owner one simple question. If you had to justify this upgrade to your own development team, which feature would you put forward first? What you will see today is that selection, the features that reduce friction, modernize your application without rewriting what already works, and help you move faster with confidence. And before we share with you what we're going to present to you today, we would really appreciate if you share, if you take the time and let us know about you, whether you are a developer, an end user, or feel something else. So here is what we have planned for today. We are diving into AI integration, QUIC connectivity, web extension with 4D Qodly Pro, stronger data integrity with ORDA Events, smarter components reuse, integrated electronic invoicing, and coding improvements that impact your daily work. And as we go, please use the Q&A section whenever something comes to mind. We will answer questions after each demo. And after some demos, you will also see a few short polls. I would really appreciate if you take a minute to answer them. It helps us understand where you stand and how we can better support your roadmap. Now, let us begin, and I will hand over the mic to Mathieu for our first and most anticipated demo.
Hello everyone. Thank you for being here today. And okay, we'll start. So we all know that while 4D users have diverse needs, their pain points are often the same. They're tired of losing time on repetitive tasks like manual data entry, sorting, or trying to make sense of unstructured data. They aren't just looking for software. They're dreaming of a tool that empowers them to decide and act faster. As developers and software publishers, your challenge and your responsibility is to deliver on this demand for modernization. You know, AI is everywhere, but the real trick is figuring out how to integrate it smoothly and effectively into your current architectures. At 4D, we believe the true value of AI goes far beyond a simple chatbot. The real power lies in its ability to understand, structure, and process data at the very heart of your business logic. With 4D21 and 4D AIKIT, we are making this technology immediately actionable. You now have the native tools to inject real, concrete intelligence deep into your application's DNA. The benefits are clear. For you developers, you no longer need just building databases. You're transforming your applications into intelligent systems capable of both analysis and autonomous action. For your users, it's an unprecedented leap in user experience and productivity. They get an application that actually anticipates their need and simplifies their daily grind. So let's dive straight into a practical example to see how this works on the ground. And I will share something here. Let's go. Over the past few months, you've heard a lot about artificial intelligence, especially with 4D21. You've seen many demos and many webinars about semantic search, RAG, conversational UIs, vectors, and embedding. But today I want to show you a very practical example where AI truly changes the game, where it clearly improves your users' experience, boosts their productivity, and makes their daily work more comfortable. So let's take the example of a travel agency using our application. Like many travel agencies, they receive a large number of emails every day, and all kinds of emails. So imagine a shared mailbox where the agency receives messages about IT technical issues, suspected fraudulent transactions, refund requests, unpaid invoice, and more. These emails, they need to be handled quickly, and it is not realistic to have someone watching this mailbox all day long. So we are going to use AI to automatically create tasks. I open the task form next to the mailbox. The idea is simple. We use AI to analyze the content of each email and automatically create a task for the right person in the company. So if we open the Data Explorer, we can see the departments: sales, after sales, marketing, IT, HR, and so on. We also have employees, and of course, each department has a manager. So the idea is straightforward. We analyze the email, we summarize it, and we create the right task for the right person. Let's try it by clicking this small button here. And we can see that a task has been created for the IT department and assigned to the department manager because the email is clearly related to IT. Okay, now when I open the task screen, we can see here that I get a new task. The email has been summarized, and the action is to renew the SSL certificate for the travel agency before it expires with a due date and so on. Perfect. So let's go back to the email and try another one. Here it's a critical booking system down. So let's see what the AI suggests here. Once again, it will create a task for IT. And here it is. Investigate and resolve the issue. Now let's process a different type of email, for example, an unpaid invoice. This time the task is assigned to the finance department. And we can continue. Here we have an unhappy customer. This will probably go to after sales. All right, perfect. Here we have a question for HR. And the AI did it right. Of course, we can see all these tasks listed here. So as you can see, this is a very simple and very practical example of how AI can improve your users' daily work. These features are easy to implement and easy to deploy with 4D21 and for the AIKIT. But here's the best part. The application you're looking at right now, the one I just demonstrated, well, I didn't build it myself. I didn't code anything. It was entirely built with AI using VS Code and GitHub Copilot thanks to the 4D extension that we provide for VS Code. So very soon I will invite you to a dedicated webinar when you will see me build this application from scratch. The data model, the data initialization, the algorithm, the forms, the design, everything. So 4D21 brings AI to your applications, but it also brings AI to help you build your applications thanks to VS Code and the 4D extension. So thank you. So this was the first demo, and let's go for another one. In this second part, I would like us to step back and put ourselves again in the shoes of our end users. Most of the time, they know what they're looking for, but they don't always know which box to tick in a search screen with 20 filters. And they get frustrated when they find nothing just because of a nuance the database cannot understand. So that's our daily challenge. As for the developers, we love structured data, precise, typed, and well-defined. Unstructured data feels hard to index and hard to fit into a user interface. That's exactly where vectors in 4D changed the game. The goal here is not to build yet another chatbot or a complex RAG system like we already demonstrated in the past. The goal is to inject intelligence directly into our existing interfaces. Your critical business filters, the one that require rigor, are still there, of course. But with vectors, you dramatically increase the search and interpretation capabilities of your screens. So for you developers, it's as simple as an ORDA query. We will see that. But for you users, the application finally understands their real intent beyond just keywords or tick box. It feels smooth, almost natural. So let's take a look at this in a short video. All right. The goal of this demonstration is to show you the power of 4D vectors and to show you what they can bring to you and to your application and to your end users. Here we are in front of a real estate application for real estate investors, big investors. Those people usually have an investment strategy, and the idea will be to describe here this strategy and find corresponding real estate assets in the database. Let's have a look at the settings. I could change the language if I want, but we'll stay in English for today. And we'll use LM Studio for both embeddings and reasoning model. At home, if you want, you will be able to use an OpenAI API key, but today we'll do everything locally. All right, that's why I will put this aside and open LM Studio. I'll bring here the log and empty this so we can see how things are going. So the first thing I will do will be to load the demo data. The demo will come with some data, and at the same time the embeddings are generated. So you saw here the logs for those embeddings. So we can now just ask for something, so for a search. So I will search a carbon neutral office space for tech tenants, okay, with sustainable building features and high-speed connectivity. And we will search this in database, and we won't use those filters for the moment. All right, here are my results. So it's quite fast. If I do it again, you will see here in LM Studio that there's an embedding going on. It's very fast. And I will select the first line, Riverside Commons here in North America. And the idea here is that I will complete this semantic search, because this is a semantic search here with the match. I will complete it with a comparison, an assessment between the investment strategy, the mandate, and the actual description of the asset. And here in the semantic highlights, what I get in English, of course, is what matches the mandate and what doesn't match the mandate. And this is a very interesting feature, so that I'm in front of my client, of my investor, and I can really have a smart discussion, smart talk about this precise asset, what it brings compared to the mandate, or what it doesn't bring, in fact. So here, for example, there's no explicit mention of carbon neutral certification or verified carbon offsetting measures. So that's an interesting point. Even if, regarding the pure semantic search, it was the highest ranking asset. So that's great. We can select another asset, the second one, Nebula Cloud Campus. And here, once again, overall, the property strongly aligns with sustainability and energy efficiency, but does not meet the core requirement of being office space. Of course, it's an industrial asset type here. So that's great. I have this kind of deep assessment of whether or not this property corresponds to my strategy here. So that's very interesting. The good thing here is that the ORDA query to get those results is fairly simple. It's just a simple ORDA query with vector here, with a vector and a threshold. The threshold here is on purpose very low. I want a lot of data. I don't have a lot of data here in my database. So now, if I try this here, pre-configured search, a value add opportunities in urban center, I will select a region here in North America, and I want at least 6% yield. Let's search that. You see I have less result now, 13 only. And what's brilliant with ORDA is that the query, it's really simple. It's the vector and a region and a minimum yield here. And if I complete here with multifamily, for example, once again, it's a very conventional ORDA query. And now for this only result, I can select it. And you see here LM Studio working, generating me this assessment, and overall it aligns with the mandate. But the advice would be to find a higher match. So I will conclude. This is the kind of feature you can now offer to your end users. I will reduce this, and combining vector search, so semantic search, with reasoning models to further improve the results or the advices you can get from the system is really, really powerful, and it's a real added value for your end users. And it is so simple to implement now with 4D21 and for the AIKIT. So now it's your turn. Thank you.
Thanks, Mathieu. You should now see a quick poll on your screen. Please take a minute to let us know what you think, and yeah, before we move on to your questions.
Yeah, this poll is about for us to know if you think AI is becoming a competitive requirement within the next 3 or 6 months. Don't forget to ask questions if you want in the Q&A section. So the question is, what is the differentiator for 4D, as this can be done with any toolset? That's a very, very good question. For me, the differentiator with 4D is that you get all the stack just in a single box, you know. So I honestly we already here implemented a lot of AI features with or without AI, and believe me, it's much simpler with 4D, at least with my experience. Do you have any case study of real implementation of AI in 4D? We already did some several webinars, so they're available on YouTube, and so please check them out. You will see you get some very interesting videos right now in YouTube. Probably we will send you back again the links for these videos. I use Gemini every day on complex and legal stuff. How can those chats be integrated into 4D? I guess it's a very interesting question as well. I think it's pretty easy to do so. Just look at the video we already provided, where I demonstrate how to build a chat box, a chatbot in a web area within a 4D app, using the 4D application data and so on. So it's quite easy. It's quite easy. But look at the latest video about semantic search, but also tool calling. Another question regarding the first demo, AI is scanning a mailbox. What about the confidentiality of the information? So in this first demo, maybe it was not clear enough, but I think it was. Everything is done, can be done locally. So in the demo I'm using for this mailing demo, I'm using OpenAI, but the very same thing can be done using a local model, like I did in the second demo. Just for analyzing an email and converting it into a task, it's a very, very simple task for a model. So a fairly basic model with 4 billion parameters should do the trick. So you can keep everything local for doing such a stuff, and nothing goes out of your application while doing so. All right, great. So we'll continue, and if there are some additional questions about AI, of course we can answer.
All right, let's jump into our next demo with Damien.
Hello everyone. Today, users expect a flawless connectivity. Whether they are moving around the office, switching from a Wi-Fi to a mobile network, or simply working their computer from sleep mode, they hate it when their applications freeze or drop connections. And as a developer or software publisher, you need to deliver that seamless experience without having to rebuild your entire architecture. This is exactly why 4D21 introduces the QUIC network protocol for your client-server applications. In the following demo, we will show you how this modern UDP-based protocol natively handles things like degraded network connections and network switching. The greatest benefits for you, the developer, upgrading this project-ready technology is completely effortless. It only takes a single click in your project settings. And for your end users, it guarantees a highly resilient, responsive, and available application that simply works no matter where they go. So let's go for the demo.
In this demo, I'm going to show you how the QUIC protocol makes your client-server applications much more resilient. We have here 3 identical 4D server applications using the same dataset. The only difference between them is the network layer they use. As a reminder, choosing the network layer is done simply through the application settings. On the end user side, we have 3 4D client applications connected to the 4D servers, each using a different network protocol: Legacy, Servernet, and QUIC. All actions on the applications are synchronized in order to minimize the impact on the displayed result. The average duration of this request is displayed at the bottom. Each application regularly retrieves 5 random person entities. I'm starting the data retrieval over my local network under optimal conditions. Under these conditions, we don't see any significant difference, and human perception of performance is not affected by the protocol during normal application usage. Now, I'm going to degrade my local network performance. I will introduce 5% packet loss and a 5 millisecond latency. I restart the data retrieval. After just a few seconds, we can already see that the QUIC network layer retrieves the information from the 4D server more quickly. Let's degrade the local network performance even further. I now introduce 10% packet loss and 10 milliseconds latency. Again, we quickly observe that response times are better with the QUIC network layer. Last test with a very degraded network connection, 20% packet loss and 20 millisecond latency. The data retrieval time is still significantly better with QUIC. We can also see that the QUIC application refreshes its data far more frequently. The user therefore experiences much better usability. That concludes the part about how network performance affects the perceived responsiveness of your applications. We will now look at another case where QUIC network layer provides increased resilience: mobility situations. My computer is equipped with two network interfaces, one wired and one Wi-Fi. I increase the frequency of data retrieval so that network interface changes are easier to detect. I start the data retrieval on the client applications. Everything is very fast for all of them. Now, I'm going to disable my wide network interface to simulate unplugging the cable. We can see that the QUIC application continues retrieving information. The link between the 4D client and the 4D server is maintained, even though the system switched network interfaces. It is slower, of course, because the Wi-Fi interface performs less well. But it does not freeze like the other two applications. Those applications lost their TCP connection and can no longer react. Here, I shortened the video slightly to show you that after about a minute, network error messages appear, while the application using QUIC continues to run. I now reactivate my wide network interface. The QUIC application keeps working and becomes faster again. You can clearly see it. Oh, it looks like it became a bit slower again. What's happening? Oh, that's normal. The wide network connection just dropped again. I don't know why, but what I do know is that my application remains available and usable through all these interface changes, and therefore all these IP address changes. That's the magic of QUIC.
Thanks, Damien. Now, once again, we'll share with you a quick poll about upgrading for network resilience, and we would really appreciate it if you take a minute to share your thought.
So I shut down and I let you do the rest.
Hello, everyone. Okay, every day we all use dozens of mobile and web apps, and it's only natural that we've come to expect the same fluid, polished experience in every tool that we use. For you, for the developers, the challenge has always been, how do I bring that high-end UI, UX into my trusted, rock-solid desktop applications without the risk of starting from scratch? Well, this is exactly what 4D Qodly Pro and 4D V21 now offers. It's not about choosing between desktop or web. It's about augmenting your current solution. In this demo, we're going to focus on hybrid experience. We'll see how 4D desktop application can now seamlessly embed modern web modules and rich UI components directly into its existing forms. For you as a developer or software editor, the benefit is evolution without risk. You don't have to rewrite your code logic to deliver major visual functional upgrade. For your end users, the result is significantly richer experience, an application that remains as fast and reliable as ever, but now looks like it feels like a modern premium tool. I'll leave you guys with the demo. Here, we're looking at a simple contact management interface. On the left, we have a list of contacts. When I select any contact, the right side displays a form with their information, allowing me to edit fields like name, email, or phone number.
You can share the
From an end user
video.
perspective, this is just a 4D desktop application.
Okay,
It is
so
fast, responsive, and behaves like a traditional 4D form. There's no visible difference, and that's intentional. Now, here's what's happening underneath. The form on the right is actually a Qodly page rendered inside a web area. So what we're looking at is a hybrid application. The data and business logic remain in 4D, but the UI layer is powered by 4D Qodly Pro. You developers don't have to rewrite your application. You keep your existing structure, your tables, your methods, your architecture. You're simply enhancing the interface layer. Let me quickly show you how the communication works. When I select a contact in the list, you can see that we're calling a WA execute JavaScript function. We pass the selected contact identifier to the Qodly page so it knows which entity to display. Now, let's look at the forms onload event. Here, we're calling that WA set contacts and passing it a utility class that I have created. This utility class exposes two methods, save contact and delete contact. So instead of the web page directly handling persistence, it calls clearly defined 4D methods. You developers stay in control. The web layer does not bypass your architecture. It collaborates with it. Now, let's switch to Qodly Studio. Here, we see the UI definition for the contact form. Their layout, components, and bindings are all designed visually. Fields are directly connected to the contact Qodly source. I'll select the Save button. On the clicked event configuration, you can see that it calls the Save Contact method from the contacts. Same thing for the Delete button. On click, it calls the Delete Contact. So the flow is very clear. The Qodly page handles the UI, user interactions trigger context methods, 4D executes the logic. Now let's go back to the running application. When I select a contact, 4D sends the context. The Qodly page updates instantly, and if I edit the data and click Save, the call goes back to 4D through the context class, and you will see that we have a synchronized state. The list shows the name when I edit it. You developers can modernize one form at a time. You evolve your application progressively while keeping the stability and performance your clients rely on. To conclude, 4D Qodly Pro allows you to combine the robustness of 4D with the flexibility of modern web app technologies. You keep control of your architecture, your users get a modern, seamless experience. And for their perspective, it's just a fast, reliable 4D application. That's the real power of the hybrid approach.
Thanks, Mourad. Now we would love your quick feedback in the pool shared on your screens before we move on with your questions. Let's switch gears to walk us through the next demo with Marie-Sophie.
Thank you. So today, your 4D applications are everywhere, on desktops, on tablets, and on mobiles with a constant web access. Despite this diversity, the experience you provide to your users must remain consistent and flawless. Security and reliability are the two pillars you are responsible for. And your challenge today is to design a central business logic capable of driving all these technologies simultaneously. 4D21 meets this exact challenge with the simplicity of implementation that we value so much. ORDA events are integrated directly into your classes alongside your business logic. There is no longer any need to scatter your code wherever it needs to be executed. Everything is centralized. These events also ensure that your users only access the data that concerns them. They accompany the data at every stage from its initial instantiation to its final storage. So the benefit is massive. A single implementation triggered automatically by 4D, regardless the access mode. So for you, this means an end to duplicated code and laborious maintenance. You now deploy robust security and a total data integrity. So welcome now to ORDA event-driven logic, where your data is no longer just information, but intelligent data. And let's jump straight into the demo now. The demo I am going to show you was built with 4D Qodly Pro, but of course, ORDA events can also be implemented in a classic client-server application or a single-user application. This demo is a product creation application where users must authenticate. So let me show you. I run a preview. And the user logs into the application. In the header at the top, we have several pieces of information about the currently connected user. We display the administrator's email address because when we create a product, if there is a technical issue during product creation, we automatically send an email to that administrator. This sales representative, Anne, has profitability targets and cannot enter products whose margin is below 10%. The margin is the difference between the cost price and the selling price. And finally, when a product is created, a user manual is generated and stored on the disk. For this user, Anne, it will be stored in the directory /docs for Anne. So the information displayed in the header is stored in the session. Before we begin, note that Anne only sees the products she has created herself. This is achieved thanks to a first event, the restrict event, which filters data each time an entity selection is built. Here, we filter the data based on the connected user stored in the session. Thanks to this event, each user only receives the products they have created themselves. On the product page source in Qodly Studio, this list uses the Qodly source products, and its initial value is set to all, meaning all the products. So you see on the front end, we don't need to worry about the connected user. The filter is automatically triggered on the server when the products table is queried. So I create a product. You can see that the product already appears with initial values. This is also done thanks to an event. It is the constructor event here. I can give the product the name P1, and as you can see, the name of the guidelines file, which will be stored on disk, is automatically updated as soon as the product name changes. This is handled by another event, the touched event, which relies on the /docs for Anne directory name stored in the session and on the product name. I can enter some guidelines. And as you can see, I am entering a product that only achieves a 1% margin, which is insufficient compared to the required 10%. So I save, and I can display a message to the user indicating that the margin is too low. This is handled by another event, the validate event. It checks the product margin against the required margin stored in the session. This is optimized because at this stage we have not yet entered the save operation itself. It is a data validity check performed before the save is executed. So I modify the selling price to reach a 20% margin. Since this is a demo, I use this checkbox to simulate a technical issue when storing the generated guidelines file on disk. I save, and I get a message informing the user that there was not enough disk space to store the file. This is also handled by an event. This is handled by the saving event. It allows you, in case of a problem during the save operation itself, to return an error. The saving event, combined with the after-save event, allows you to guarantee data integrity. In case of error, you can see that my guidelines file name and the product status are updated to reflect the issue. I reset the file name, and the product status is set to missing guidelines file. An email also was sent to the administrator to notify them of the technical issue. In the administrator's mailbox, there is a message. As you saw, the events are implemented in ORDA classes, the entity class or the data class. I only showed you the saved part, but the exact same logic and the same events also apply to the drop operation. This event-based logic was not previously possible with 4D20, at least not in such a flexible and automatic way. Compared to triggers, it brings many advantages. There is no massive table locking. You can have multiple saving or dropping events running in parallel, provided they involve different records. The logic is much more modular with finer granularity. You saw that we have validate events which run before entering the persistence action itself to perform data consistency checks before persistence. And we have events that are directly integrated into the persistence layer and designed to guarantee data integrity. The events are implemented together with the rest of the business logic inside other classes. They can be useful, for example, when persisting data in third-party systems. Events also allow contextual data filtering. For example, here the user only sees their own products. This filtering occurs at the 4D engine level, regardless of how the data is accessed. The combination of a restrict event with roles and privileges provides maximum security. With 4D21, you now have a true event-driven logic. By definition, it is implemented once in a single place and automatically triggered by the 4D engine when appropriate. So you no longer need to implement this logic everywhere it is required. Data consistency is therefore guaranteed with 4D21.
Thanks, Marie-Sophie. And once again, please take a short moment to tell us where you stand in the poll shared in your screen.
There's a question.
Sure, I followed the filter event. Could this be applied at the global level? And then
We don't have the end of the question. Basically, regarding the restrict event, we mainly use it with the session object, which holds which users is currently triggered the query. So what you have to understand is that every time a query is run and you have implemented a restrict event on the data class, it will be run. So it will deliver an entity selection that will be used instead of the all.
Yes.
The whole entity selection. So you provide a subset of records that
Yes.
that you want the query to work on.
Yes, and then this is the filter that will be applied to deliver your entity selection.
Yeah, so it's a global filter. It's a global filter.
I know the restrict event is implemented in the data class. So not at entity level, but here in the demo, it was the products data class to target the products table.
So this logic, you put it at the data class level, not at the entity level. Yeah.
So each time you query the products data class, each time you build an entity selection, the restrict event is triggered and you apply the filter you have implemented.
So it's very powerful. I don't know if you feel it, but it means that whatever the person executing a query through REST, for example, or web, it will be triggered. So there's no way somebody can access unwanted data. There's no way. It's deeply implemented at the core database level. And this code is located at the data class level. So it's this kind of business logic it lays together with the rest of your business logic.
Yes. And on the blog, you have also a blog post about the restrict event and an HDI.
Yeah.
So you can play with it and discover how it works.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, let's hand this over to Fabrice with our next demo.
Hello everyone. Today, your users expect applications that can evolve quickly. And what better way to do this than by using a modular architecture? With 4D21, we have worked hard to simplify development with components. Dependency management is now seamless. You no longer need to leave your projects to add a new component, update it, or even debug it. For you, this means increased productivity and unparalleled coding comfort without any disruption to your workflow. And for your users, it means the assurance of a new features delivered much more quickly. Let's see it in action. I'm working on a project and would like to display weather information on my dashboard. I have already developed a component that manages the weather and I would like to use it for this project. So I need to add it. To do this, I open the Project Dependencies interface. I click on the plus button, which opens the component addition window. I have the choice of adding local components or components from GitHub. Since my component is available locally, I simply select it in my environment and add it to the host project. All that's left to do is restart the project. And there we go. We can now see that the weather component is part of the project. Let's check in the Explorer to make sure it's there. We can find it there, perfectly integrated. And this is where the second important new feature comes in. Since the component is installed with its sources, I can directly access its code and modify if it's necessary, which greatly facilitates debugging. For example, if I run my dashboard form, we see that there is a bug. By tracing the execution and looking more closely, we see that the response attribute does not exist. Before 4D21, I would have had to open the component separately in 4D to fix the problem. Now that's no longer necessary. I can intervene directly from the host project. Let's take a look at the component's code. Indeed, the attribute does not have the correct name. There is an error, an extra S. I simply correct the name, retest. And there you go, everything works correctly. I didn't need to leave my host project or interrupt my workflow. And of course, it's not just a matter of modifying existing code. You can also add or remove methods and classes, and make significant changes to the components or from within the main project. Now that my components has been corrected, I need to share this correction with my team or my clients. If you use GitHub, it's extremely simple. Just commit the change, then create a new package. For example, here, I'm committing with GitHub Desktop and creating a new tag for this version. Let's take a look at GitHub. I have a script that uses the build for the action project, which launched automatically and is now automatically generating my new release. I'm now going to open another project that uses this component that I've just created. All I have to do is go to the project dependencies interface and check for updates. When I restart, the new package is retrieved and installed automatically. Distribution, therefore, becomes just as smooth as development. In summary, with 4D21, component management becomes simpler, faster, and above all, more integrated. The new project dependencies interface makes it easier to add and update components. The Explorer has been enhanced to allow components to be modified directly from the host project without interrupting the workflow. And integration with GitHub ensures clean and efficient distribution of updates. The end result is more efficient creation, correction, and testing. Team productivity increases, and end user benefits more quickly from a higher quality for the application.
Thanks, Fabrice. And now let's pause here and take your questions.
Fabrice, is it planned that the edit component in host database will be extended to allow editing of forms as well?
Yes, it's in discussion. Today, it's not the case, but perhaps in the future.
Yeah, we have a long roadmap still ahead of us for components, and it's part of it. If it's important for you, please say so in the forum, in the feature request section. It's important.
I think that's all we have, so
yeah,
we can move to the next one.
Thank you.
All right, so for this one, unfortunately, Majda, who is the product owner responsible for this feature, could not join us live today. So I have the pleasure of setting the stage before we watch her recorded demo. Now, let me ask you something. If electronic invoicing becomes mandatory for your customers next quarter, would your application be ready on day one? Because when regulation changes, your customers do not call their lawyer first, they call you. So if their invoices are not compliant, they cannot bill properly. If they cannot bill properly, payments are delayed, which is something normal. And cash flow slows down, and suddenly what looked like an administrative topic becomes a business risk. And this is where 4021 LTS changes the conversation. And instead of treating compliance as an external constraint, you build it directly into your application. You keep your existing projects, you keep your business logic, and you give your customers a system that is ready when the market moves. That means fewer last-minute fixes, fewer emergency patches, and more confidence when regulations evolve. Now, let us see how this works in practice. In this demo, we are going to show you how to generate electronic invoices in an existing project while complying with the required regulations. Since many of you already have stable projects that manage electronic invoices, we decided to use one of our own existing projects for this demo. We simply made a few adjustments to it. First, we added this button, which opens a project form containing 4D Pro. This will display our electronic invoice. Now, let's run the form and see what happens. In this 4D Pro area, which is empty for now, we will show you step by step how to build your electronic invoice. First, we import an invoice template that we found online. As you can see, just like in any word processing tool, inserting information into a 4D Pro document is simple and straightforward. Here, I am inserting company information. Then I am inserting formulas. And as you can see, the formulas are automatically calculated as soon as they are added. Now we are going to modify the table. We need to display more information than what is provided in the original template. In fact, we removed some lines because they will be added dynamically later, depending on the number of invoice lines. Here we are adjusting the styles. We also need more details for the totals, so we are adding additional rows in the table for that. At this stage, we are simply refining the layout by adjusting width and borders, just to show that beyond content, you can also make your document more visually appealing by manipulating it directly. Let's go back to our form. We are going to add code that assigns a data source to our table. In our case, the data source is the invoice lines. Now we run the form again, execute the code we just added, and if we switch to formula mode, you can see the data source has been correctly assigned to the table. Here we are adjusting the number of table headers. Then I am inserting the formulas for each item from our invoice lines data source. And of course, we must not forget to add the formulas for each total. Once everything is calculated, our template is complete. Next, we export this template so that it can be loaded automatically by the form. Going back once again to our form, we remove the temporary button since we are no longer in need of it. In the onload method, we add the code that imports the templates we just created. Now we move on to the final part of our process, which consists of exporting our 4D Pro document as a PDF A3 electronic invoice. As you probably already know, there is no electronic invoice without XML. So we first need to build the XML in order to attach it to the PDF. Here we are adding the data that will be used to construct the XML, including information about the seller, the buyer, and the invoice lines. We then pass this information to our buildXML method, which returns an XML text. This XML text is then passed to our final export PDF A3 method. We reused the buildXML method from another project available on our GitHub. We simply adjusted it slightly to match our needs and to make it compatible with our structure. It is important to note that this method will vary depending on the FactorX model you choose and according to your own data structure. Now let's look at our export PDF A3 method. As you can see, it is quite simple. We use the WP export documents command with an options object. In this options object, we specify the FactorX version as well as the details of the XML file. For example, we indicate that the XML content is the XML text that we previously generated using the build XML method. Now, we can see the entire process working from start to finish. Here is our list of invoices. We click on an invoice and the template is loaded. The formulas are automatically calculated at the same time. We click on another invoice and the corrected data is loaded as well. Then we click the export button. Let's find the file that was generated. And here it is, a PDF A3 invoice with the embedded XML. In this example, we used the basic XML invoice model. Just as a reminder, you must ensure that your XML is properly validated. There are many tools available that can validate it and generate detailed error reports if needed. We have now reached the end of our demo. In conclusion, with 4021 LTS, electronic invoicing goes beyond simply meeting regulatory requirements. It allows you to embed compliance directly into the core of your business applications, enabling you to deliver management solutions that are fully prepared for this now essential requirements. Thanks, Majda. So, ready for the next one? Vanessa, it's all yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to present some new features that very concretely change the way you develop. Greater productivity, more natural and better organized code that is easier to read and maintain. And above all, fewer errors from the moment you start writing. KD21 now performs many more checks for you, even before you compile or run the application. Something that wasn't possible with 4020. Problems are detected much earlier, directly while you're writing the code. And of course, less time spent fixing issues means more time to develop, what really adds value, developing useful features faster and building more reliable applications for your user. Let's take a closer look at these features in detail. The project shown here is intentionally extremely simple. One data class, one list form, one detail form. Each form has its own class. Let's open the list form. In the property list, you can see the form is associated with its class. Here is the class with its properties and function. Immediately, we get several benefits. Auto-completion, that saves time, better code readability, and most importantly, error detection while typing. For example, here, when assigning a data source to a list box, I make a mistake, I validate, and a warning appears. No need to run the application or compile the code anymore to see an error. It appears instantly. Inside the form code, I also benefit from auto-completion with the form command. No more typo. Let's run the project and look at this contact. If I change the type, the display field automatically changes. In real applications, it's common to display different fields depending on an option or a context. Let's look at the code. The form is associated with the contact detail form class. The pop-up calls the create dynamic field function. We duplicate and position the object. The difference is that before, we assign the data source using pointer. Now, with object set data source formula, we directly associate a formula as the data source, which simplifies and clarifies the code. And here comes the real benefit. Inside the onSave function, the code you see is not form specific. It is standard ORDA code. Previously, dynamic duplications forced us to manipulate pointers. Now, using formulas allow us to write code exactly the same way as everywhere else in the application. The final feature is more subtle, but just as important. It allows you to declare and initialize a variable or property in a single line. This detail may seem trivial, but in a real project, repeated dozens or even hundreds of times, it significantly improves readability and reduces code verbosity. For example, here in this method. That's it for this demo. No visible feature was added to the interface. The goal was to observe the code and how we write it today with 4D21. These are very concrete improvements with a direct impact on the developer's daily work. Less code to write, fewer errors, more comfort, and above all more time to focus on what's matter for your customers. Building useful features, maintaining more stable applications, and reducing bugs.
And thank you, Vanessa. We'll continue with our next demo with Bérengère, and actually the last one.
Hello, everyone. So singletons in 4D can be used in several ways. They can be used to centralize services, structure utilities, manage workflows, or even control the overall status of an application. Today, I'm going to focus on one of the many ways in which singletons can be used. I'll show you a very concrete and practical example how to use a singleton as a data cache manager. The examples are deliberately simple, but the architectural impact is very real. The demonstration is based on a medical houses management application that we use internally. So unfortunately, I cannot share the entire source code for the application, but I've prepared a small demo project containing the classes and the forms that I will use today. So you will be able to view the code and possibly draw inspiration from it. So now let's see how it works in practice.
We'll start with a very simple example that we can find in almost all business applications. Here I have a person table with, of course, the last name, first name, and a field I've called title code. It's an integer field, for example, 1, 2, or 3 for Mr., Mrs., or Miss. Historically, in 4D, we could of course manage this with the lists in the toolbox, but it was mainly for interface elements. Today, we're going to use a class instead to centralize these value lists and the associated logic. In my project, I have a class that I've named Cache Manager. Now, HWMH is the name of my application, but it's the Cache Manager class. So it's a shared singleton class, the shared keyword, which means I'll only have one single shared instance of this cache for the application for the user session instead of having inter-process variables or loading data in multiple places. A singleton is a type of user class, but a bit special since we'll only have one instance per process or for all processes in my application if I've used the shared keyword, but we'll also have a single instance for all the server processes. For the titles then, I chose to store in a collection which is a property of the singleton called titles with the values Mr., Mrs. and Miss. The collection index corresponds directly to the code that we're going to store in the database. This will allow us to lighten the data if I only store integers. Now, on the interface side, if I go to my patient list, you see on the left that I'm obviously displaying the title in full for the user. To do this, I actually have a computed attribute in my person entity class called title, which we'll go and look up. In fact, in my title collection, the one that corresponds to the code I've saved in the database. So you see that the computed attribute is actually very, very simple. So this syntax, which is really specific to singletons, I can see right away that I'm calling a singleton since we call it with .me, followed by the member functions or the properties of the class. The advantage of singletons is also that, as you see here, I don't need to instantiate the singleton every time I use it. If I've never used it during my application, the instantiation will happen all by itself, automatically. And so that's why in my singleton, I put my list of titles directly here in the constructor in my titles collection. And so the singleton will only be called once. No matter where I use my singleton, I don't need to instantiate it explicitly. From the moment I call it for the first time, if the instance doesn't exist, then the constructor will be called. That's also a very great strength of singletons, and it really changes the game and the way we're going to develop in 4D. To allow the user to choose the patient's title, when I focus on my title input field, I'm going to display my pop-up menu here. And this pop-up menu, if I look in my cache manager, is a member function that lets you display this pop-up menu and return the result chosen by the user. I'm returning here, in fact, the title code chosen by the user, and that's what I'm going to store in the database. Another example. Here, I have a little wizard that will allow me to create a new appointment. And I can choose here the type of consultation requested by the patient: dietetics, physiotherapy, sophrology, and so on. This is a list of values that isn't meant to change every other day. So it's something that I can put into the cache. In the same way, in the same singleton, I'm going to have here a property, a collection of consultation kinds. Except that instead of instantiating it in the constructor, right from the instantiation of my cache manager object, I'll instead call a function that will allow me to load the cache when I need it. And to load the content of this collection, if the collection isn't defined, I'll call the consultation kind data class. The cache load function will allow me to go and fetch the data I need from the server at that moment and load it into a collection already pre-sorted. This means that I will only load my data when I need it, which will limit the number of exchanges with the server. It also means that loading data from the database will be done from the server. And I'm only going to retrieve the attributes that I need. If I look at the consultation kind table, you see that I have the name, the description, and possibly a small icon. Now, in my case, I only need the primary key and the name. And what's more, I'll be able to sort this collection on the server side and then send it back to my client. So here, I'm using the local keyword, but there, I'm not using this keyword. That means that this function will be executed on the server side. I'll stop there within the time allotted to me for this demonstration. So in these two examples, I've deliberately taken very simple cases, a list of titles and a catalog of appointment types, but behind it, the idea is always the same. We're replacing interprocess variables that have been deprecated since 4D 19R5 with a shared singleton that's dedicated to the cache. So that allows me to both avoid overusing the storage. Most of the time, the first idea that comes to mind when thinking about replacing interprocess variables is to load everything into storage, except that accessing storage has a cost. And what's more, I'll be able to have member functions dedicated to business logic for the data that's in this singleton. So I'll be able to centralize both the data and the logic that goes with it. And I'll be able to pave the way, of course, for a more preemptive, more efficient, and more maintainable architecture. Here, it's a simple cache for titles and consultation types. But in a real application, you can apply this exact same pattern to many other reference lists and other business caches. This is how 4D21 lets you modernize shared data management in your applications, with this first use case we've just seen. By replacing deprecated interprocess variables with shared singletons, you prepare your code for preemptive execution. You centralize your business constants, you encapsulate the associated logic, you improve code readability and maintainability, and ultimately this results in applications that are more scalable and performant for your users.
Thanks, Bérengère. And this would be our last call for questions. So please share them in the chat before we close with a few additional slides for today.
A question about channel binding for V21, for 4D21. I guess I saw a discussion about that in the forum. So probably we'll get back in touch in the forum about this one. All
I
right.
believe we can move forward with the next slides before we end it for today. So just a few moments to conclude. What you have seen so far is only a fraction. 4021 LTS includes more than 100 new features across AI, connectivity, web, security, architecture, and developer productivity. What we showed you today are only the highlights, the features that immediately move the needle, and behind them, there is depth. So each of those additional capabilities represent new room to grow your application, respond to new requirements, and strengthen your commercial positioning. It means more problems you can solve, more value you can deliver, and most importantly, more reasons for your customers to continue investing in your solutions. So when we talk about 4021 LTS, we are not talking about incremental improvements. We are talking about expanding what you can confidently offer to the markets. And that is the bigger picture behind this release. We have shown you what 4021 LTS enables. Now imagine building with it alongside AI. In this upcoming webinar, Mathieu will create a full 4D app using AI to generate catalog methods, forms, and modern UI patterns, and even implement an AI-powered workflow that turns emails into tasks automatically. It would be fast, creative, and it would gain you time, that for sure. And it shows what moderns for it shows what 4D, it shows what modern 4D development can look like when AI becomes part of your daily workflow. And if that sparks your curiosity, please join us and save the dates. And let me leave you with something else that is strategic and would help you. We all know that features expand your products. However, learning expands you as a developer or a final user. And with Learn 4D, we created a new dedicated space to help you stay aligned with the evolution of the platform, adopts best practices faster, and structure your growth over time. Of course, it is multilingual, structured, and constantly updated and built to fit into your real developer routine. If you want to fully leverage everything we showed today, Learn 4D is the place to sharpen your skills. So don't forget to visit learn.4d.com and start your journey. And before we wrap up, one quick reminder, everything you saw today is expanded in detail on the 4D blog. We publish regularly with technical guides, products updates, and practical implementations, insights written by the team. If you want to go deeper, refine your approach, or stay aligned with best practices, the 4D blog is where the conversation continues. And with that, we reach the end of today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today. If any questions comes up later, reach out to your 4D representative or continue the discussion on the 4D forum. And we really look forward as a team to what you build next. So thank you, and yeah, have a great day.